Welcome to the Bamboo Podcast, where we interview a range of guests about self-care, infant care, and relationships during the perinatal period. We are your hosts, Leah
and Kayla.
Today we interview Dr. Vincent Mancini, a Senior Research Fellow at the Telethon Kids Institute in Perth, Western Australia. Vincent is involved with the Fathering Project, which is aimed at empowering fathers and father figures to improve the health and well-being of children.
In this episode, we discuss parental reflective functioning, which is the process of parents trying to understand their children's and their own thoughts, feelings, and intentions. Vincent also discusses effective co-parenting and ways to integrate self-compassion into our daily lives. If you enjoyed this podcast, listen to the episode linked below where we chat to Vincent about the benefits and dangers of online parenting forums, how new parents can navigate their changing partner relationship, and coping with a preterm birth. We hope you enjoy. Some of your other work, Vincent, is around reflective functioning. Can you tell us what that refers to?
Reflective functioning is a way of thinking and understanding other people's thoughts and feelings. So right now, for example, in this moment, I'm looking at these two people on my screen and I'm thinking, what are they thinking about me right now? Are they thinking that I'm talking too much? Am I ranting too much? Are they going to edit this out? And maybe
Absolutely not.
But that opportunity for me to try and attempt to understand your thoughts and feelings, I'm looking outside of myself and thinking, I'm putting myself into your minds and going, what? How are they seeing me right now? What are their thoughts and feelings about me or about this situation? Is reflective functioning. So it helps us to imagine what someone else might be experiencing inside their mind, either in the present moment or when we think about their behavior outside of it. So if I was to give an example, if your friend came to school or came to work looking really sad, instead of just saying, oh, they're frowning and moving on, if you're engaging in reflective functioning, you would go, I wonder why they're feeling that way. Has something happened at home? Are you worried about the test or the employee review that's happening later on? Maybe you had an argument with someone, or maybe something went wrong. So that thinking about what is it that this person is going through at this current point in time is an example of reflective functioning. And reflective functioning is a capacity that can be built. It's like a muscle. But what you're able to do if you are reflective functioning well is you get to respond to that person in a more understanding and supportive way. So I don't just go, you're frowning, whatever. If I can go, I think there must be something happening. I wonder how, that's right. They told me that they were having some arguments with their partner, or they were really stressed about their job security because they heard that the company's letting people go. Then that allows you to actually not just miss or ignore that emotional state that person's being in or making incorrect assumptions about them. Instead, you might actually approach them and say, hey, is everything all right? You seem a little bit down, or you don't really seem like yourself today. Is everything all right? If you want to have a chat, I'm always here. So really it unlocks your ability to be more sensitive and caring towards others.
And why would this be really important for parents? How does it impact children's development?
In a few ways. One of the primary ways, particularly for parents of younger children, is that parent reflective functioning is linked to the ability to develop a secure attachment relationship between parents and their children. So, for example, when a parent can accurately understand their child's internal experiences, then they can respond more appropriately. So, for people who have toddlers, dealing with that frustration that toddlers can experience, because it's like they get these feelings, but they can't yet verbalize them because they can't really express themselves by saying, hey, mum, hey, dad, I'm really frustrated because I'm trying to build these blocks and they're not clicking together how I want them to. So when a parent has a good capacity for reflective functioning, they can say, okay, I can see that my child is getting quite frustrated here, and now I can implement an appropriate response to actually help them process or regulate that frustration. Depending on the age of the child, parents may act as the sort of external regulators of their child's emotions. So for example, if you've got a crying tiny baby, it's very difficult to say to your baby, well, what you need to do is problem solve or tell me about how you're feeling. You might not be able to get them to do that, but you might be able to, give them a cuddle, help them soothe. But when you've got children who are maybe a little older, sort of 3, 4, 5, and they're developing a vocabulary and an awareness of their emotions, etc., then what you might be able to do is say, hey, I noticed that you're pretty frustrated here and you're starting to maybe take it out on your sibling, or, to throw or to hit or to bite or to whatever it might be. And I'm wondering if you and I can think of a way that we might be able to handle these big feelings more effectively. So it can actually help children to regulate their emotions, because parents are sort of the primary person who children will learn to regulate their emotions from. And it's a really critical piece there to children's emotional development, but also a parent's ability to engage in reflective functioning with their children can help their child actually develop both, not just socially, but also cognitively as well.
Yeah, I really liked one of our previous interviewees said that we are our children's frontal lobe before they're fully developed. And I thought that was a really excellent way to think about it. Is we can't expect them to verbalize, to problem solve, the way that we should, but we can help them do that. We can co-regulate with them, support that process. So I thought that was a great way for parents to think about
no,
the way they parent.
Yeah, I love that quote. Part of I guess maybe some of the challenges that can come up in parenting is actually understanding, is it developmentally appropriate for my child who's maybe 1 year old to be problem solving or using advanced cognitive skills to regulate themselves, or actually it might not. And what these babies might actually need, not necessarily babies, sometimes kids, sometimes adult children, sometimes all they need is a hug from mum and dad, or some attention to help them to regulate, to calm down, and get back to being themselves.
Definitely with that reflective functioning, like you're really coming back to helping your child with their emotional literacy. They need to learn that, what is anger, what is frustration, what is sadness, what is happiness. They may feel it in their body, but they don't know how to get those words out. And that's part of our job as parents, to really support them and give them those words for what they're feeling, and for them not to feel shame or any other feelings that can then add on to that about what they're feeling at that time, I think is so important.
Yeah, I mean, children are like sponges, and they'll learn from you about how to regulate their emotions, particularly when they're sort of at that toddlerhood type of age. And one of the things that I've sort of said in practice working with dads with toddlers is get things wrong on purpose, and then show your kids how to bounce back from that. So you're not just modeling how to do things correctly all the time. Actually simulate getting frustrated, making a mistake, and verbalizing, and you sort of modeling how to actually bring yourself back out of that frustration. Because what might actually happen is, without paying a lot of attention to it, we're all guilty of sometimes not handling things as much as best we should have. Mums, dads, and everybody in between get frustrated. They break things. They're under stress from work. They, let small problems really bother them. And during this time, children are sort of almost always watching. They're watching you when they're in the booster seat in the back of the car, as you're sort of getting road rage and frustrating and yelling and cursing at people who are cutting you off or stealing your car park. And the opportunity to create or engineer situations that would actually allow you to model good problem solving or adaptive behavior are really critical, and something that people don't really think about. People are so obsessed about getting things right in front of their children, and that's actually not always about getting things right. It's actually about getting things wrong and then bringing yourself back out of that. And so they're learning this process.
Love that.
I love that too.
I think the reflective functioning would also be really crucial, linking back to that changing partner relationship, trying to take on board what your partner's feeling during that transition period that they're probably struggling with a lot, and trying to be really aware of what they might be feeling and how that's reflected in their behaviors before responding to them.
Even if you right now are a really good reflector, I suppose, you've got a very good capacity for reflective functioning. When you're under high stress, or when you're under a certain amount of pressure, your capacity to reflect well drops. And so what that means is that our capacity for reflective functioning, our capacity to actually understand what the other people are thinking and trying to put ourselves in their shoes, gets diminished because of external pressures. If you're really under high stress from work, you probably spend less time thinking about how your partner is going to think about the fact that you're going to go have a few beers after work and try and soothe yourself, or I'm going to go to rugby 5 times a week now just because I need to try and keep things together. And so it's really important that when it comes to, I guess, addressing potential sources of conflict or resolving conflict, we try and get people into as best of a position as we can that they can actually use all of their reflective functioning capacity. So we try and bring people out of those high pressure, highly anxious states before we start to think about making decisions and coming to solutions. I guess offering suggestions that may or may not actually be the result of some good reflective functioning.
And what sort of strategies do you give them to try and bring themselves back down to that place where they can be, reflective?
I would say that, maybe an example can be if you're finding yourself in a situation where either you're struggling to reflect or maybe your partner is struggling to reflect or understand yourself in that situation, you can either take a break, let's sleep on this, we'll come back to it. Or alternatively, you might be able to ask them that. So what's going through your mind right now? Help me understand why it is so important that you go out after work to blow off some steam before you come back. Because for me, I'll tell you that I'm really struggling at home because we've got the 3 kids and I'm trying to get dinner ready, and I've got a crying 2-year-old and a crying 3-year-old and a crying 8-year-old. And so, I guess trying to help that person understand where you're coming from.
I was just going to say, my partner and I like to set a time. So, and that'll be a time when, we don't have too much going on, obviously. And then often there's no need to even discuss it because it was just an in the moment sort of thing. But if it is more important, so perhaps it is, around sharing responsibilities around the children, things like that, then you've had that space and you can be in the appropriate mindset because you know specifically when you will discuss that important topic.
It's a great point. And we see this where if you're under high stress, you agree to things that you probably would never have agreed to otherwise, because you just go, yep, fine, whatever, you can do it. Yes, you can go out every Friday night. I don't care, whatever. Just this conversation's making me feel yuck. I want to get it over with. So people make decisions that they haven't really reflected on quite as much as maybe they should have. And so, a strategy like that, where you're sort of saying, look, let's come back to this, or let's schedule this one in and let's revisit it when we're both in a mindset that would be more conducive to us making good, informed decisions. I really want to understand what your situation is like before I agree or disagree to something, but I also really want you to understand what my situation is like before you make a particular decision to do something or not do something.
Yeah, and take some practice as well to sort of end that discussion and schedule another one before you get to the point of coming to a solution, which isn't really a solution because it's not really what you wanted or isn't, what you both should, would have agreed on, as you said, if you were in a better frame of mind. So, and that's again a process of growth and just taking the time. And another point I was thinking about is when you do come back to that discussion later on, you've had time to reflect on your own emotions, and so that you can better articulate what you were feeling, which is then makes it better for your partner, easier for them to understand what was happening and how that was reflected in your behavior. So overall, just a lot more helpful to that process.
Completely agree. And we've all been in that situation where you're like so frustrated because how are you not understanding how hard this is for me right now, right? And there could be a couple of reasons for that. One is maybe I'm not actually articulating how hard this is for me. I'm expecting that a person is picking up on my passive aggressive, my sighing, my, clanging around or whatever it might be, where really what they needed was for me to go, this is really hard for me. Or alternatively, it could be I might be doing all of the right things, sending all the right signals, saying to them, this is really hard for me. But if their capacity for reflective functioning is completely diminished, it's almost like it's falling on deaf ears. Like they're not going to be able to actually really understand that. So it's again, really important that when it comes to making important decisions as a family, for both parties being in that mindset where they're actually able to really understand each other, sets you up for the biggest likelihood of whatever decisions that you're making or whatever conflict you're going through can be resolved or achieved.
Yeah, I love that. Very, very interesting.
Oh, definitely. So, Vincent, my question was going to be, we were just talking about your work that you do in dispute resolution and, how important is successful co-parenting to infants' development?
This is a really great question, and it's one that people will ask me quite often, particularly in the context of if you're a single parent. You could be a single mum or a single dad, or recently separated or potentially widowed, and you think, oh no, like my child is going to miss out on half of what other children get. For those parents who are listening who may have grown up in a single parent household or who may be a single parent, so I want to dispel that myth quite quickly. So I don't want people to think that every child needs to have two parents. But what I would say is that for a child who does have two parents or two primary caregivers, a successful and harmonious relationship between those caregivers, most often both parents, either biological parents or step parents, is really critical. Co-parenting is effectively that the relationship between parents that is not necessarily just their romantic relationship or their romantic involvement with each other, but it's that relationship in the context of parenting. So how are we making decisions about our children, and what is the quality of our dynamic as dual caregivers for this child? When it comes to I guess shaping a child's development, a healthy co-parenting relationship is critical, not only because of the environment at home that can be generated when there's poor co-parenting relationships. So if you're not communicating well, what this can mean is that there can sometimes be role confusion around whose role is what, or whose responsibilities for the child fall under whom. So who's doing school pickups, who's doing cooking, who's doing cleaning, who's responsible for discipline, who's responsible for presence, all that sort of stuff. And what we also know is when you think about the number of parenting programs and interventions and services that are available, a lot of them do target the co-parenting relationship. For mothers and fathers, or for parents, their co-parent is often the biggest source of support when it comes to decisions that are made around children, if not their own emotional support as well. For parents who are recently separated, you still have, and it maybe pains people to hear this, you still have a relationship with this person because you've got children together. You will still need to, at some point, inevitably co-parent with this person. And I should say, as well, as a anecdotal story, my parents separated when I was about 6, and I suppose the thing that, looking back on it now, that both mum and dad did well, despite maybe at different periods in my life hating each other's guts, is they co-parented very well. So they were both very supportive of the other person's role, and I probably underestimated maybe how painful it was, the fact that they had to communicate with each other, to sit next to each other at parent-teacher evenings or award nights, etc. But they still did that. So for me, despite people saying, oh, isn't that like a form of disadvantage growing up with living in a single parent household? I don't feel disadvantaged by that because of the successful co-parenting relationship my parents had.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And look how successful, your career has been, and all the amazing research that you do and can give back to other parents that are, now potentially co-parenting, but also the support that you're giving fathers throughout their journey of being a parent. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, the co-parenting relationship and that dynamic between mum and dad or parents does become a bit of an internal working model for kids. They're sort of learning about how how adults treat each other, right? It's not necessarily just mums and dads, but because children spend more time with their parents than anybody else, they're starting to learn about what is a healthy co-parenting relationship, or how should parents interact with each other, be it healthy or unhealthy.
Yeah, and that reflective functioning and emotion regulation as well, right? So if
Yeah.
you're seeing these two people who have a challenging history and
Mm.
they really struggle, as you said, to communicate, to see one another's point of view and to regulate their emotions around one another, that's really negative modeling of how to communicate with people that we maybe do have a bit of a challenging relationship with.
Absolutely.
Thinking about self-compassion, what is the role of
Mm.
self-compassion in the development of the attachment relationship between fathers and their young children?
Self-compassion is a little bit like, imagine that someone who you really deeply cared about, your partner, your best friend, your mum or your dad, was going through a really hard time. What would you do for them? So you probably wouldn't tell them to toughen up, get better, this is your fault. You'd probably do the opposite of that. You'd say, are you getting everything that you need right now? How can I help you? How can I get you through this? How can I be there to care for you? If you want to just vent, if you just want to sit in silence, if you want to go out and do something, just tell me and I'll do it. And we've all been in that situation in the past where people that we deeply care about have been hurt and we support them. Self-compassion is effectively the ability to do that for yourself. And what's really interesting, particularly in the context of men, and it might be because of that sort of traditional masculine norms around the expression of emotion and going through hurt and pain, etc., is men seem to have a really hard time caring for themselves the same way that they would care for other people around them. Self-compassion in the attachment relationship, particularly between parents and their kids, self-compassion, and this is a paper that we published last year, is a really important predictor of the quality of an attachment relationship between dads and their children. Parenting is filled with errors and mistakes. Okay. And if you lack that compassion for yourself, it's really easy to see that you start to maybe disengage from parenting. What's the point of even trying? Why put in the effort? I'm just going to get it wrong. And that kind of mindset can really diminish the quality of that relationship that you have with your child. Part of the reason why self-compassion is so interesting in the clinical psychology literature is because it's a transdiagnostic protective factor. And when I say transdiagnostic, I mean that self-compassion has the ability to prevent all sorts of different conditions when we have it. So people that have high levels of self-compassion tend to experience better quality of life, better social support, reduced anxiety, reduced depression. So self-compassion seems to be this really far-reaching construct. And in the context of parenting, what we also see is that self-compassion is related to lower levels of parenting stress as well. And that's because maybe you're not being as hard on yourself or as critical of yourself. And so then you're able to experience reduced rates of parental stress. And parental stress is also a risk factor for poor attachment relationships with your children as well. So if we can improve self-compassion, you start to maybe unlock the ability to experience reduced parenting stress, improve mental health outcomes, all of the things, improve relationship quality between co-parents. And all of those things create an environment that would allow fathers to form really productive, healthy, happy attachment relationships with their kids.
So if you're a dad right now listening to this and thinking, that's an area of my life that I think could be improved, where do they start?
Try and treat yourself with a bit of kindness. Give yourself a break, okay? Think to yourself, if this was my best, dearest friend, my partner, my dad, someone I deeply cared for, and they were going through this situation, what would I be saying to them? And I'm going to say that to myself. You want to be able to challenge that inner critic. So when you're being very self-critical, maybe challenge yourself. So the idea that, just because I got this one thing wrong, I'm a failure as a parent. Well, I'm going to try and identify a number of times where I got things right, or I didn't do as bad of a job. And maybe it was, sure, I couldn't settle the kids tonight, and I feel pretty bad about that. I feel quite guilty because it was meant to be a special date night for my partner and I, or I was going to do something else after. But I did do a good job all the other times. So being able to start to identify evidence that is in contrary to whatever critical thoughts or beliefs that you're having.
And thinking about how we would respond to a close friend is such a great way to start changing that critical inner voice that we all struggle with. So, Vincent, are there some other strategies that we can use to integrate self-compassion?
Another way as well is actually to think about cultivating gratitude. So thinking about the positive aspects of your life, thinking about your accomplishment as a parent, no matter how small they seem. Sometimes people keep a gratitude journal, writing things down that they're grateful for each day. And I know that it doesn't seem like a particularly traditional masculine thing to do. And for me, I just think it's just such a testament to, it's like a little secret weapon that people might keep to themselves very privately. The idea of a gratitude journal isn't actually to share it with people, to brag about all the things you're grateful for. This is just for you, because realistically, unless you sit down and ask yourself, what am I grateful for today? You're probably never actually going to think that and realize that there are these things there that just, you probably, because of the nature of life, you take them for granted sometimes. And it's really easy to maybe miss some of those really important things that we can be grateful for. It can be the fact that, I'm really grateful for my partner. I'm really grateful for my kids. Or I'm really grateful for the fact that I have a good job and I'm secure, or I have even something really small like a hot meal. It's delicious and really what I needed today. So being able to cultivate gratitude, and that practice it's an investment, and investments pay off over time. It's these small cumulative contributions. Even just one thing that you're grateful for a day, that's 365 things in a year. And also, in addition to all of those things that you're recognizing that you're grateful for, you're starting to pay more attention to the other things that you're grateful for as well. They might not make it into your gratitude journal, but you'll become more aware of all of those other things that are around.
Becoming a practice, yeah, and your mindset
Totally.
becomes more positive over time.
Yeah, it's habit forming. And I suppose the last thing maybe as well is particularly for dads, is embracing imperfections and setbacks. Instead of striving for perfection, recognize that your imperfections are just a part of the human experience. And sometimes when you embrace those imperfections, you get to look back and you get to laugh, and you also get to see a bit of process and progress in that journey of, you know what, like, boy, I really used to get a lot of things wrong. I get a lot of things wrong now, but maybe not as many.
I love that that's thinking about those wins rather than those perceived failures, and that it might be necessary for parents to reframe what they think of wins, that it might not be, you know, getting the children to bed at a certain specific time. Maybe it's that process that we were only getting the kids to bed at 9 p.m, but tonight we got them to bed at 8:30. So we're not quite where we want to be, but it's that process and those sorts of wins, as opposed to doing things exactly the way we'd like them to be done.
Absolutely. And I mean, anything that's been challenging or difficult in your life, or anything that you're proud of, I'd say it's probably a better way to think about it. If you think about something that you're proud of, it's typically something that took a long time and was very hard to get to, and that's why you're proud of it. You're not necessarily proud of the achievement, you're proud of the work and the persistence and the perseverance that got you there. And that's the same for parenting as well. And along that way, there are all these little wins. And you ask them what their biggest accomplishments are, a lot of parents will say it's my kids, right? It's the fact that I got to be able to put my kids through school, I got to give them shelter, safety, I was able to create something that was better than me. And I think good fathering is lots of things, but really it's also how you bounce back from those imperfections. Do you let them get on top of you and wrestle you into the ground so you can't get back up, or how do you leverage those imperfections as learning experiences and opportunities to try again, maybe try something differently, or to persist?
And knowing that those little people are watching you, so that you're modeling how you can deal with those imperfections, and, you know, just practicing stuff, not being getting to that main goal of perfection. But yeah, that your kids are watching, you're the model for them, and it's a great learning opportunity for them to see how you may fail at something, but then how you bring yourself and pick yourself back up.
Totally.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And when you think about people who you get along with and who you like and who you respect, it's the people who have everything perfect, I kind of think they're a bit weird. They're either lying about something or they're not human. I get a lot more out of talking to people that have gone through some sort of imperfection and told me how they got through that. I'm like, show me how you overcame adversity. When I think about people who portray themselves, or who maybe are, not that I've ever met anyone who's genuinely perfect, I wouldn't know where to bond with them, how to, you know, we can't talk about shared struggles. I'll go to them for support or for advice, for example. I'd much rather talk to someone that's been through that and use that hardship to maybe to grow and develop.
And we see that vulnerability as such a strength in others, but we struggle to feel that way about ourselves when we share difficult experiences.
Yes, exactly.
Vincent, thank you so much for today. I have learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners will get so much out of this, particularly fathers, but also mothers. I can see that your pearls of wisdom throughout our whole conversation will, be really enlightening for a lot of people. Thank you so much for your time.
No worries.
Two of my sort of favorite takeaway that you had for us today was how you described reflective functioning and self-compassion as muscles throughout the chat, so that we can be, constantly working on this, practicing it and improving on it, that it's not something we have or don't have. I think that's really crucial for new parents.
Yeah, it's a journey. Thank you very much for having me here as well. I'm always happy to come and chat. So thanks for listening to those that are listening as well. And if anyone has any questions, they can just shoot me an email, and I'm always accessible and here to chat.